Blue once again, and this time we are running up against blue-white control. This is our opening hand. It's not the most exciting, but it does have a bit of action. We can get these law brokers out to dig a little bit deeper. We've got some bounce and some counter, so I think we were okay with this. So we're on the play here, so we're just going to run out this border post to kick things off. Plays Flooded Strand, which makes us think they're probably on blue-white control. Run out Lawbroker, pass the turn. Plays the Hallowed Fountain Island. Plays Snapcaster for no value, which is kind of interesting. So it looks like they're stuck on lands. I decided just to take 2 here. Draw Days Undoing in duplicate, which will be good if we can get to a Narset. Kind of in like an awkward spot. Opponent plays another Snapcaster Mage, clearly struggling on lands, so I don't really want to use Lawbroker to help them find the land they need. So I'm going to trade one of the Lawbrokers with a Snapcaster here. We draw into Disrupting Shoal, which isn't really what we were looking for. And we are going to have to deal with this Snapcaster eventually. We draw Spell Snare, which is nice. We kind of Vapor Snag and then Spell Snare the Snapcaster on the way back down, potentially. And finally finds their 3rd land. So I'm going to just dig here and see if we can find something. And we do manage to find a Notion Thief. I decided to discard the 2nd Days Undoing because hopefully 1 will be enough. But unfortunately that's not how this plays out, which is kind of regrettable. Maybe we should have discarded something else. So we go for the Notion Thief, but our opponent ends up having a Logic Knot, which they're going to cast for 1. So as they cast it for 1, fortunately we can use Disrupting Shoal, exiling Days Undoing to counter it, because Expels are basically you add up the amount of whatever X is, and then that's the converted mana cost. So converted mana cost is 3 for a Logic Knot, where X is 1. So that saves the Notion Thief, but we do lose the Days Undoing, which is a bit unfortunate, because that could have been game, to be honest, had we managed to pull that off. So it is a big regret, because then we would have drawn 14 cards and been in a really powerful position, whereas our opponent would have had to shuffle away their hand and drawn. Well, actually, they wouldn't have drawn any cards. So yeah, it's a major setback for us, and we definitely shouldn't have discarded that Days Undoing in hindsight. Opponent plays Teferi, which is a pretty big problem. Obviously a lot of our stuff is our cards that we want to play at instant speed, so Teferi is a problem for us. So Teferi's going to bounce the Notion Thief, going to activate Lawbroker in response here, so we can force our opponent to discard, and we get to draw an extra card as well. So we find Vendilion Clique, which is nice. Fortunately, we're not going to be able to play at end step thanks to Teferi, which is irritating. And we're not going to be able to replay this Notion Thief either. So I'm going to Vapor Snag this Snapcaster here, so we can finish off the Teferi with the Lawbroker and get rid of it. As I mentioned, it's causing us quite a lot of trouble. But as a Teferi, which is not Teferi, a Vendilion Clique, which is kind of awkward. We could have played our own Vendilion Clique on draw step, but I figured there's potential for us to have something we might want to counter with Disrupting Shoal. And we also have or Spell Snare, so we've got Counter Magic up, so I figured it was better just seeing what happens here. Try to substantiate this Vendilion Clique. Unfortunately, our opponent plays Dovin's Veto, which is another War of the Spark card, and it turns out it's pretty good in these kind of matchups. where his potential counter was, because if that had been some other 2-mana counter like Mana Leak, I could just spell snared there and won that counter war, but unfortunately as it stands we are unable to do anything about that, and Vendilion Clique is going to come down and steal our Notion Thief away, which is a pretty big game. So we're only at 9, so we do have to do something about this Vendilion Clique, unfortunately. I think we're just going to wait here and see if we can drop this Vendilion Clique end of turn. So we're going to take a look at our opponent's hand. So we've got Cryptic, Dovin, another Dovin's Veto, Jace, Narset, and Snapcaster Mage. It's all a little scary. I'm going to take the Cryptic because that's the biggest value card in there. But obviously we're just going to have to try and play around these other bits and pieces, but possibly not going to be the easiest. Draw Spell Pierce, which isn't bad. That's going to be a decent answer to Cryptic potentially. Or the Planeswalkers, if he just tries to run them out here. Opponent tries to play Snapcaster, we're going to Spell Snare. Opponent can Dovin's Veto, and there's not really anything we can do about that necessarily. But, well, actually, then we can Disrupting Shoal the Snapcaster if we still want to counter it. But opponent's not going to fight over it. There's Narset, which we can't really do anything about. We're 1 mana short of Disrupting Shoaling it. We don't have anything we can exile to actually counter it. And our opponent's got enough mana to Spell Pierce, so yeah. Opposing Narsets are kind of a problem because they do the same thing to us that we're looking to do to our opponent, prevent them from drawing. So I'm going to loot just to see if we could answer that, but it turns out we can't. Narset finds Cryptic Command. We dealt with a Snapcaster, and that Cryptic went away, but our opponent's now got a new Cryptic. So we're not in a great position here. We could have tried to commit the Vendilion Clique so we can get this attack through to get through to Narset, but not a great position. Maybe we should attack with a Lawbroker as well, just to get that opponent down, the Narset down to 2. Field of Ruin takes Mikakoro, which is fine. We're not really looking to make everyone draw a card at this moment in time. It's not really advantageous to us. Narset finds another Teferi, and things are looking kind of bleak for us. So we're going to try and counter this Teferi with Spell Pierce backup, but again, Dovin's Veto comes and ruins our day. Teferi Bounce is the Lawbroker. We're going to loot, finding Notion Thief, which I guess we want to keep. And I'm going to discard Commit. Maybe we should get that around. It's just very expensive. But I suppose it is an answer to Planeswalkers. Maybe we should have kept that over the Spell Pierce. Kind of a tricky call. Or maybe the Vendilion Clique needs to go. But I think either way, we're not really looking in great shape. We'll play out this Border Post because we might as well. I planned to play on Upkeep, but I obviously failed to remember that our opponent's got Teferi, so we can't actually play anything at instant speed. So I should have played out one of our creatures during our opponent's turn, but yeah, this is the misplay by me. I was hoping to Notion Thief in response to the Brainstorm. Opponent's Surgicals are Lawbroker, which is going to get something. It also gives them a chance to look at our whole deck, so I think given that we're in such a bad position, I don't really see us winning from here. I decided to concede the match from here rather than show them our whole deck. But yeah, we got Planeswalkered out. I think the game could have been very different if we hadn't discarded that Days Undoing, and after we cast the Notion Thief, we'd have been in a pretty good position, which would have been nice. And I think we probably would have won from there. So yeah, it's kind of these micro decisions that end up costing you a lot with this deck, and it's kind of one of the more difficult sides of it. is deciding when and what is important, and it's not always easy to know or easy to figure out. But yeah, unfortunately, we got overwhelmed in the end here. Okay, so here we are with the deck and the sideboard. Against control, I guess we want the Commandeers. I suppose Commandeer is potentially one of the better cards in this matchup. Stealing Planeswalkers is kind of one of the best things you can do with Commandeer generally, and there's a lot of targets here in terms of Planeswalkers. Our opponent looking like they're playing a particularly Planeswalker-heavy version of the deck, given that we've seen Jace, Narset, Teferi, all in that last matchup. So yeah, I think Commandeer is probably something we want to bring in. Spell Snare, it's not amazing, but obviously it's just a 1-mana answer to Snapcaster Mage, which is pretty good, so I think we probably want to bring that in as well. Our bounce cards are probably not the best here, really. I mean, like most of our bounce is probably not too great. Snapback can probably go. Unsubstantiate is still decent, but yeah, certainly Snapbacks probably want to go away. And Engulf the Shore as well is probably not a card that's going to be much good. Commit Memory is a little bit slow, but at the same time it's also one of our answers to Planeswalkers, so maybe we just keep that in. I don't really like bringing in Relic. We could bring it in just as like an answer to Snapcaster Mages, empty their graveyard, but it doesn't seem super great. I think we want Blast Zone in some number, because that's an answer to Planeswalkers that we can play. I mean, they do have Field of Ruin, but I still think it's important to have some answers to the Planeswalkers. And then otherwise, I think that's probably it, to be honest. And Ancestral Vision, I guess, is a card we probably want as well, just as like a long-term value play. Although we do have to worry about Narset, which could prove a little bit problematic, but I think we bring that in as well. And yeah, in terms of cards we're bringing out, I suppose Vapor Snag, Snapbacks, Engulf. That's probably the main ones. We can maybe cut down on Disrupting Shoals maybe a little bit as well, because we don't want too many pitch cards if we're bringing in the Commandeers. Yeah, I think those are probably the priorities. Okay, so we're game 2. This is our opening hand. It's not amazing, but it does have the chance on the play to have a turn 3 Narset, which is kind of hard to turn down, and it'll be pretty good if we can stick this Narset, so I'm willing to run with this. We've also got the turn 2 Lawbroker to follow to play along with that, so I quite like this hand. It certainly could be better if we had fewer border posts and more spells, but I think we can go for it. So try and play Lawbroker that gets hit with a Spell Snare, unfortunately. I'll play the Plains. I don't think there's any... well, there are reasons not to go for Narset here, but I think our chances of sticking Narset probably don't get better by sitting back. I think they're probably the better control deck, so I think we stick it. Yeah, our opponent doesn't have an answer to that, so that's great. -2 finds us a second Narset, which could come in handy. It's not the ideal card for us, but certainly not bad. Opponent collects a Flooded Strand and has a Narset of their own, so that's quite problematic. As I say, this basically because it does exactly the same thing that it would do to us, that we are looking to do to them. We can't draw additional cards, so we're kind of in an awkward, even Stevens kind of splot. So we draw Days Undoing, which is really agonising, because if they hadn't cast Narset, that would have been really backbreaking. And I mean, hopefully would have just won us the game from there. But yeah, Narset means that, well, I mean, we can still cast Days Undoing, but we'll draw no cards, and then our opponent will draw 2 and then have an Narset activation, so I think that just puts us too far behind. So instead I'm going to run out Lawbroker, play a Border Post and another land, -2 Narset. Sorry, I skipped over that choice, but I ended up taking this Ancestral Vision. I think in hindsight maybe that was just a wrong play because they've still got Narset and we don't have a great way of dealing with it. Obviously if the Ancestral Visions does resolve eventually, that would be great, but we have to kill this Narset first, and that's easier said than done. With our opponent running out of Teferi, which bounces the Lawbroker, and then playing a Field of Ruin. Draw Blast Zone, which is nice. That's a good answer to these Planeswalkers, but unfortunately our opponent's got Field of Ruin, so they are going to be able to deal with that. Teferi ticks up, we run out our Lawbroker again. Find a Vapor Snag, which doesn't do a whole lot for us. Going to try and attack Narset here, but our opponent's got Snapcaster Mage. Chances that. We could run out another our second Narset with the intention of trying to find another card, but it's not a great position for us. Opponent has another Snapcaster, so they're going to be able to attack and kill this existing Narset. Teferi ticks up again. I could have actually no, we can't Vapor Snag the Snapcaster Mage, so yeah, I mean Teferi makes our life really hard. I'm going to tick up the Blast Zone here to 3 so we can try and kill these Planeswalkers, but inevitably our opponent has the Field of Ruin to deal with that, which puts us in a really bad spot. We draw Gaia Reach Sanitarium, which doesn't really do a whole lot. Try and cast Narset. Our opponent has Cryptic, and there's not actually anything we can do about that thanks to Teferi, because we can't play anything at instant speed, so we can't even unsubstantiate the Narset. So yeah, that's basically game. Unfortunately, we're sort of out of luck and out of options with our opponent with a Narset in play. Makes even casting this Days Undoing incredibly miserable. So yeah, this matchup didn't go well. I think it's a pretty rough one generally, just because they've got so many Planeswalkers, and Planeswalkers aren't the kind of cards that our deck's well set up for dealing with. They also don't really play creatures, which is kind of what we're expecting with our deck, and that's hence why we have these sort of these banned spells. I'm not really sure why I kept the Vapor Snag in hindsight. Maybe I missed that one. But yeah, that's this matchup just seems kind of rough in general. They've got answers and counters for our sort of big spells, and also they've got Planeswalkers, which makes locking them out of the game just that much more difficult. So yeah, I don't think this matchup's very good. I'm certain there are cards that we can bring in that would help, and I think possibly Force of Negation coming from Modern Horizons might make this one a little bit more easy to deal with. But yeah, otherwise I think this matchup's kind of difficult. And potentially Force Negation makes our life a little bit more difficult as well if blue-white control decks take up on it, because we're kind of looking to play most of our important cards at sorcery speed, namely Days Undoing and Narset. And Teferi gives some very good protection for them as well from a lot of the things that we're trying to do, which is a bit frustrating. So yeah, I think this matchup is pretty rough, and certainly proved to be in this scenario. Definitely one we want to be avoiding. I think really anything that's sort of counter heavy is going to be difficult for us, and Planeswalker heavy is also a bit of a problem just because there are permanents that stick on the board and have an ongoing impact on the game that can disrupt us.